One of the benefits of being blind is not being distracted by a person's physical appearance, but instead developing a more genuine impression based off of how they speak and the words they use.
How a person uses their body can be incredibly eloquent. The layers that are there within sign language, including emotion, meaning, and how they convey their connection to the world.
My name is Hayden Dom. I'm studying engineering, and I also happen to be blind.
My name is Louise Stern. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm an American. I'm the fourth generation of deafness in my family, and my native language is American Sign Language.
I can hear if someone is speaking directly at me or if they're facing at an angle, just based on how the voice is projected.
Eye contact is a beautiful thing to me as a deaf person, and I think I'm more sensitive to that. So when somebody does make eye contact with me, in that moment, it makes me feel like they see me.
The voice isn't just a vehicle for communicating written words out loud. It has an extra layer of meaning.
那河畔的金柳是夕阳中的新娘，波光里的艳影在我的心头荡漾。
My name is Matt Davis. I'm a neuroscientist working for the Medical Research Council. I study what's going on in the brain when you're processing language. Language is the most unique skill that humans possess. It's the thing that sets us apart from all other animals. It's the foundation for our intelligence, for our communication, and for all of the things that we do in our lives. The earliest attempts to understand how language was processed in the brain started from neurology, started from observing the impact of damage on the brain. So if you have damage in a part of the frontal lobe here on the left called Broca's area, that leads to an impairment in speaking. If you have damage to Wernicke's area, a part of the brain in the temporal lobe here on the left, you appear to have problems with comprehending language. Now what we've discovered in the decades of research that followed is that this view of Broca's and Wernicke's areas as involved in speaking and understanding is far too simplistic. They both contribute to different aspects of both processes, but also that language has spread out to colonize most of the brain. If you're listening to a radio program or watching someone signing, those different parts of the brain are involved. Different parts of the brain will be receiving information. Auditory cortex here on the top of the temporal lobe involved in hearing. Visual cortex at the back of the brain on the occipital lobe involved in seeing. Parts of the brain that are involved in making sense of what someone's saying, accessing the meanings of the words that someone's trying to communicate, are largely shared between sign language and spoken language.
I think as a blind person, I'm far more attuned to an individual's voice. That's really the only, that's my main source of interaction with people.
软泥上的青荇，油油的在水底招摇，在康河的柔波里，我甘心做一条水草。
My name is Victor Cedo Matellan, and I'm a junior research fellow in linguistics at Queen's College, University of Cambridge. When we communicate using language, we take some sort of internal representation and we transform it into a perceptible signal that people can understand. It is important to distinguish between this abstract linguistic expression that we have in our mind and the actual externalized output. The difference in the amount of information that we can convey with each modality has to do basically with the organs that we use. For the oral auditory modality in oral languages, we have basically this channel, which is the mouth. So we can only convey these units one at a time. Whereas in the manual visual modality of sign languages, we have different organs that may act independently. So basically we use the hands to convey the basic information, but on top of that we may add information with the brow, with the facial expression, with the position of the head, etc. So there is one fundamental difference between oral languages and sign languages. In oral languages, things have to be expressed in a linear order, whereas in sign languages, they can be expressed simultaneously.
So in English, when you want to convey aspect, you have to use an individual word or a phrase to express how long or short something takes place. But in sign language, we can use space to convey that. An example of this would be, I've been cooking for a very long time. Or you could say, I cooked. Or you could say, I've been writing for a really long time. Or I wrote something up very quickly.
Another unique aspect of sign languages is that you can produce a word with one hand, keep it there, while signing with the other hand to add more information.
So in my refrigerator, I must have olives. I must have lemons. I must have herbs. And I must have cheese. Sometimes I like to eat cheese with all the other items, perhaps mixed into a salad.
This is the reason why we can't always translate signs into a spoken language.
So I guess poetry, isn't that defined as the things that cannot be translated?
那余荫下的一潭，不是清泉，是天上虹，揉碎在浮藻间，沉淀着彩虹似的梦。
Poetry and the spoken word is obviously a combination of both the word choice and how you enunciate those words, the rhythm that you give to them. But how do you achieve those in a physical language?
I think for languages like sign language, how it feels to produce the sign is how other people feel when they see it. What denotes a beautiful signer for me has to do with fluency and simplicity. Somebody who conveys emotion with every ounce of who they are, their facial expressions are on point. It has to look natural. It has to be pure.
I would say that having a sensory disability is not having a lack of ability, it's having a lack of access to information. And being able to make your situation equal to your peers depends on finding ways of accessing that same information.
I understand sound conceptually, so I understand it on an intellectual level. But in terms of my everyday life, it doesn't really impact me. Sometimes I'm curious about it, just the way you'd be curious about something that a place you've never visited that you'd like to go and see.
但我不能放歌，悄悄是别离的笙箫，夏虫也为我沉默。 沉默是今晚的康桥，悄悄的我走了，正如我悄悄的来。我挥一挥衣袖，不带走。
The assistant who is escorting me out of the tube station kept saying, "Oh, come over here." And said, "What do you mean by here? Left or right? Left or right? What do you mean?"
So when deaf people are signing, sometimes their signs create sound. There might be a clap of the hands in this movement.
It's a common assumption that you can translate signs into spoken language, but you can't.
Duck. Oh no, we're good. But we should We should practice the sign for that.